There's a parchment paper tip in this video that I'm willing to bet most people have never known about. Watch until the end because the final tip might leave you wondering why you didn't learn it years ago. Now let me show you the first parchment paper trick, and it's all about making cleanup easier. Making popcorn at home is usually as simple as adding a little oil to a pan, pouring in the kernels, and putting the lid on. As the popcorn starts popping, tiny droplets of oil splash up and stick to the underside of the lid. Take a look at this. Just seeing all that grease makes you think about the scrubbing that comes later. Fortunately, there's a very simple solution. Before you put the lid on the pan, place a sheet of parchment paper over the top. Then, close the lid as usual. The popcorn will cook the same way, but the parchment paper acts like a protective barrier. Instead of coating the lid with grease, the oil lands on the paper. The difference is surprisingly noticeable. The paper catches most of the splatters, while the lid stays much cleaner and easier to wash. Once the popcorn is finished, remove the parchment paper and throw it away. Have you ever used parchment paper for a purpose other than baking? Let us know in the comments. Have you ever wanted to deep fry a small batch of fries only to realize how much oil it takes to fill a pan? That's simply too wasteful. Here's a clever solution. Take a sheet of parchment paper and fold it as shown. Once it's opened up, it forms a compact box that can hold cooking oil surprisingly well. Now place this folded parchment paper container inside your pan and carefully pour the oil into it. Then add your potatoes and fry them just as you normally would. Take a look at the difference. With this amount of oil, the potatoes can be fully submerged and cook evenly. If you poured the same amount directly into the pan, the oil level would be far too shallow to cover the fries properly. You get proper deep-fried fries using a fraction of the oil and far less to pour out afterward. This next one might be the most surprising so far. If you've ever pan-seared a chicken breast, you probably know how easy it is to end up with meat that's dry on the inside or slightly burnt on the outside. Chicken breast is naturally lean, so it can lose moisture very quickly once it hits a hot pan. But here's a method that many people have never tried. Take a sheet of parchment paper and place the chicken breast in the center. Fold the paper around it and seal the edges tightly. You don't need to make it perfect, but the goal is to keep as much steam from escaping as possible. Now place it in the pan and cook it just as you normally would. As the chicken heats up, its natural moisture turns into steam. In fact, if you look closely during cooking, you can actually see droplets of moisture collecting inside the parchment paper. That's the chicken holding onto its juices instead of losing them. And the result. Take a look at this. The outside develops a beautiful golden color, while the inside stays tender and noticeably juicier. It's the kind of chicken breast that stays moist with every bite instead of turning dry and tough. Give this trick a try the next time you cook chicken breast and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you thought the parchment paper chicken trick was clever, here's another variation that might surprise you even more. Instead of using a frying pan, you can get creative and use a waffle maker. Open the waffle maker and place a sheet of parchment paper on the cooking surface. Set the chicken breast on top, then close the lid. Because the waffle maker heats from both the top and bottom at the same time, the chicken cooks much faster than it does in a skillet. As the chicken cooks, the natural juices stay close to the meat instead of running onto the machine. The result is a chicken breast that stays tender and juicy while developing an appealing golden exterior. But the best part is right here. With this method, most of the grease and mess will stay on the parchment paper. Simply lift it out, remove the parchment paper, and throw it away. That's it. No greasy plates to scrub, no bits of food stuck in the corners, and no complicated cleanup afterward. Next is a parchment paper trick that's perfect for anyone who keeps sliced beef in the freezer. Have you ever bought a package of beef, frozen it for later, and then discovered that all the slices were stuck together in one solid block? Here's a much better way. Place the parchment paper inside, then arrange the beef slices in a single layer. Be sure to leave a little space between each piece so they don't touch. Next, place another sheet of parchment paper on top. Add a second layer of beef, but stagger the slices as shown in the video. Continue alternating layers of parchment paper and beef until the container is full. Once you've finished, close the lid and place the container in the freezer. When it's time to cook, simply remove the container and take out exactly the number of slices you need. The beef separates easily without tearing, sticking, or turning into a frozen clump. Have you ever tried storing meat this way? Let me know in the comments. Believe it or not, parchment paper can become a baking mold all by itself. All you need is a small piece of parchment paper and a cup or measuring cup that's roughly the size of the mold you want to create. Place the parchment paper over the cup and gently press it down into shape. In just a few seconds, you've created a simple baking mold that's ready to use. Now comes the fun part. Fill it with whatever you'd like to make. This reminds me of a weekend when my family decided we wanted homemade mini pizzas. Everything was ready to go, but after searching through the cabinets, I realized all of my small baking molds were already being used. For a moment, I thought we'd have to change our plans. Then I noticed a roll of parchment paper sitting on the counter and decided to try something different. When the pizzas were finished, the result was surprisingly good. The parchment molds held their shape beautifully and worked almost like regular baking molds. The mini pizzas came out golden crisp and delicious. And honestly, these little pizzas tasted just as good as any we've made with traditional baking pans. Not bad for a mold you made in 10 seconds from something you already had. And since we're finding new ways to make parchment paper work harder in the kitchen, here's a trick every air fryer owner should know. Have you ever wanted to roast chicken in your air fryer only to discover that you're out of the pre-cut parchment liners? You still have a roll of regular parchment paper, but when you try to place a large sheet inside the basket, it folds everywhere and just looks messy and awkward. Fortunately, there's an easy fix. Place a large sheet of parchment paper on top of the air fryer basket. Then make 4 cuts, one at each corner, adjusting them so the paper can fold neatly around the shape of the basket. That's all there is to it. Once you place the paper inside the air fryer, you'll notice how well it fits. The sides fold up naturally, the bottom sits flat, and everything looks much more organized. Instead of buying another box of liners, you can create your own custom liner in less than a minute. And parchment paper doesn't stop there. With just a little creativity, it can even help you reduce the amount of grease in your meals while making cleanup much easier. Remove the air fryer basket and place a sheet of parchment paper directly in the bottom of the drawer underneath. Then put the basket back in place and arrange your chicken on top just as you normally would. Cook it using your favorite seasoning and settings. At first, it may not seem very different from a regular air fryer setup. But once the chicken starts cooking, something interesting happens. As the heat circulates, the excess fat naturally renders out of the chicken thighs and drips downward. Instead of collecting all over the bottom of the air fryer drawer, the parchment paper catches much of that grease before it has a chance to spread around. And there's another benefit. When dinner is over, you don't have to deal with a greasy drawer coated in sticky residue. Simply remove the parchment paper and throw it away. Cleanup takes only a few seconds instead of several minutes of scrubbing and washing. So, which of these parchment paper hacks surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you discovered a new trick you'd like to try, don't forget to subscribe, and join me for more simple kitchen ideas that make everyday cooking easier. Until next time, take care and happy cooking.